This is the third in the car on a foggy Wednesday morning. I'm waiting for the car to warm up. That's one of the things we have to do here in the colder climates. We have to wait for our cars to warm up. So I don't really have a lot. There's not a lot going on in the video game world these days. Right now, I was speaking briefly yesterday with someone on Twitter who had attended PAX South, and he told me that basically what we saw at PAX East was kind of the same thing that they saw at PAX South, meaning that it was the same exhibitors. It was probably roughly about the same concentration of booths and whoever was on the floor. So, you know, I guess this year the idea that you know, PAX South was favored over East, you know, isn't really accurate, which is good to hear, because that way, you know, we'll have to wait and see next year as to whether or not you know, where the presence is and how you know, how companies represent themselves, if at all, at each of the events. But it's also kind of sad, because this year that just goes to show that there really isn't a lot going on right now in the video game industry. I don't know. I guess that's okay, because too much information really would probably end up, you know how these things happen. They with the hype train and all this other business, people are all excited about stuff, and we're buying stuff and throwing money at projects, and then everyone later on down the road kind of gets disappointed. And you know, there's only one or two projects which actually feel like it was worthwhile, which is a fantastic segue to roll into saying that I canceled my Crowfall pledge for Kickstarter. Crowfall is really an anomaly to me. Whoa. Icy today. Mainly because it's a PvP game. I'm going to four-wheel drive. It's a PvP focused game. So you, from what I can gather, you are some kind of immortal. You are a pawn of the gods, and therefore you have the leeway to go out and do all kinds of, you know, dickish things in the world. And you progress out from a home base of sorts. It's an immutable world which is actually ruled by other players. And from there, that is your staging base, you head out towards this ultimate evil. And the universe is arrayed in a set of gradient rings that surround this great evil. So the further you get from home base and the closer you get to this great evil, the more difficult things become. So the interesting thing is that each one of these rings that you progress through is a procedurally generated landmass, and it lasts either for a certain amount of time or until certain conditions are met. And each of these rings spawn with a particular with a different rule set. So, for example, one of the examples that the developers gave was that maybe one of the rings is, you know, only will allow centaur players only, which means if you're not a centaur, you can never go there. So that's kind of interesting. But after the conditions are met, or after the time is met, that world goes away, which means you're never going to be able to go back to that world, and a new world will pop up in its place. So, you know, in that regard, it's kind of like a Minecraft server, or like playing Minecraft itself, where you can generate a new procedural world, and, you know, unless you use the same seed, you know, it's no two are never going to be the same. Being a PvP world game, however, you progress through these rings, and you end up, you know, fighting other players for objectives, I guess, in these worlds. So I don't know if the server will provide those objectives. For example, the Centaur world, maybe you have to take a fortress. So you've got 2 or however many factions they're going to have fighting over this fortress, and whoever captures and holds it for a certain amount of time wins, and then the world resets and so on. Just speculation by way of example. Again, I wrote about this earlier. I'm not a PvP super fan. I like the RVR stuff because you can basically just go in with a whole group of people and be totally anonymous, and everybody's just fighting, and it's never anything personal. You're really more at risk of getting yelled at by someone on your own side than you are about being teabagged by someone on the other side. The other side just wants to get the objective done, as far as you can tell. Back in the Warhammer days, when I was actually in a PvP guild that had been doing it for years, it was a hell of a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I kind of enjoy Guild Wars 2, World v World, but I don't do it that often, meaning almost never. But it's still kind of fun when you do it with a bunch of people, or you just run with a huge group. So, not being a huge PvP fan, I kind of pulled my my pledge from Crowfall. Partly because, well, they've got a far more dedicated fan base that have already pushed them well beyond their limit on Kickstarter campaign. And second, it's $30. I was at the $30 level, the bare minimum to actually get the game at a discount. And they hadn't taken my money yet, but by the time they do, I could do other things with that $30 basically right now, and giving it over to them, fantastic. I get something in return. There's no way that this game won't make it on the shelves. Okay, there's really no way. I think they've got so much momentum behind them. They've got industry veterans working on this game. They know how to create a game. They know how to ship a game. But the distance between them taking my $30 and me getting anything from it, really, I don't know. I'm past the the guild is off the lily here as far as Kickstarter excitements go. I don't really sit around with bated breath anymore, waiting for my rewards to show up. And I know it's an investment and it's not a purchase, but in that case, I've invested more than enough money in Kickstarters that have either failed or have yet to actually come through, that I don't need to throw more money down a hole while which basically just leaves me sitting around waiting for return on investment. I can do something else with that $30. Other segue. So last night I got City Skylines, which I just kind of stumbled upon the other day when it was in the Steam's Coming Soon bucket. And I really like building games. I'm always looking for a game that allows me to just kind of sit back, put my feet up, and take my time. And City Skylines, people were saying, is what SimCity, latest edition, should have been. And okay, but I don't usually like that kind of comparison. I don't think it's fair. Mainly because everybody's got their own ideas of what's a particular entry in a genre should be. And I like SimCity. I think SimCity has got a lot going for it. Of course, there were the problems at the beginning and the situation surrounding it, and a lot of people are unable to let go. So SimCity has become kind of a pariah, and in this case, the whipping boy. But City Skylines is it's pretty robust, although it has a distinct lack of tutorial. What it has instead is it has info cards that pop up whenever you click on something for the first time, which kind of explain to you what what you're looking at. It doesn't really tell you strategy or how to use it, but it does give you a little bit of information, like how to do roads, how to zone, things like that. Stuff that if you've been playing Sim City games for as long as I have, is kind of ingrained, right? The benefits to it, it is huge. You have a massive map, although you're only limited to a little bit of it at the beginning, and you can then eventually sprawl out in an enormous area. You have a lot of different pre-built landscapes to start on, and there's also a lot of editing tools in the game that allows you to go ahead and essentially throw down your own landscape. You can design your own land, so you can make your hometown if you really want. The game is fast. The game is pretty. One of the things that's just kind of, I don't know, it's not a problem, but when you're talking about like the really nice looking houses and the really nice looking everything else, the UI is kind of minimalistic. It's not very, it's not really super sexy. It looks like a little bit step up above what you'd see in a demo. When someone's showing off the user interface features of Unity or something like that. But I mean, the point of these kinds of games is really not the user interface, right? The whole point of the game is that the user interface needs to be informative, and then it needs to get the hell out of the way. And that's exactly what City Skylines does. Presents you with the information that you need. There's the overlays, which show you, how where your power distribution is, where your water distribution is, where your hospital, police, fire, school coverage is. It shows you the relevant information. Two of the things that I don't like, actually, as far as the gameplay goes, is you can't tell what your houses need when they're unhappy. I started out last night on a new city, and a lot of the people who were moving in were unhappy. So you can click on the house, and it gives you the name of the household, which you can change. So I was streaming last night on Hitbox, and I told everybody, if you come in and say hello, I'll name a household after you. So I've got a whole bunch of community households now. But the informational panel tells you whether they're happy or unhappy, but it doesn't tell you why. It doesn't tell you how to go about fixing their unhappiness. So in that regard, you have to kind of really get into the informational panels and try and figure out why. I realized that a lot of people were unhappy because they were living next to the power plant, and that was polluting their area, so they weren't too pleased about that. Also, this is the other thing that I really don't like, is that features are locked by achievement. So you start off being able to build, to zone and to build certain kinds of roads. Your budget panel basically allows you to allocate money towards water and electricity. And that's basically about it. Once you get 500 residents, however, you unlock the ability to throw down schools and hospitals and garbage collection facilities. So I suppose it's kind of good because people don't start clamoring for garbage collection, for example, until you reach 500 people, which means you don't have access to garbage collection, but you don't need it until you have access to it. So I suppose that's kind of okay. One of the more interesting things about it, though, is that when you start off, and this is one of the things that could have used some explaining. When you start off, you'll have a highway, and then you'll have two roads which are coming into the white bounding box area that you have to build in. Now, one of these roads is the ingress, and the other is the egress. So what you're not doing is building two ways in and or two ways out. One of these roads that's coming into your area is the way people will get in, and the other one is the way they get out. So that actually is extremely important, because all of your traffic is going to come into your city via one road. So what I accidentally did last night was to create one road in, and then proceeded to use that as a loop through my residential areas until I reconnected it essentially back out to the egress road. That was a disaster, because all of my traffic is now limited to this loop, and it looks like an ant colony on its way to a picnic. All of the cars are coming in off the highway, looping around through the city. They basically have to travel through residential areas and everything on their way to, you know, the commercial district, which is on the far end of the loop, or even worse, the industrial district, for allowing people to get to work. So the idea really needs to be that the ingress comes in and then splits off as soon as possible to allow people to go about their business. And the way you can get around this is that you can actually build different elevations of roads. So you could actually have, you know, the ingress coming along at ground level, and then it goes about its business, and then it can you can build a higher road that actually swoops down over, you know, your inbound roads on its way to its to the exits. So yeah, so that's a little bit of live and learn right there. So far so good, though. I had turned on the infinite money mod, which comes standard with the game. They have a lot of nice content management there. You can download mods off the Steam Workshop, but it comes with some 3 free mods, including an unlimited money cheat. So I turned that on thinking, well, I'm just going to go ahead and build. I built a bunch of houses, but nobody was coming in to live in them. So I don't know if that's a bug or what. After turning off the mod, because it's active for your current session and doesn't actually save with the save game file, I still couldn't get people to show up. So I'm going to have to look around, do some research, and see if that is a bug. Because you can have infinite money, you can build all kinds of stuff, but nobody's going to go to work if you don't have anybody in the town. So there's that. Although it didn't seem too difficult, so long as you keep up with the zoning requests, it didn't seem too difficult to get to 500 people and to start actually earning money instead of hemorrhaging it. So it is, what is it? I think it's something like, yeah, it's $29.99. So if you bought SimCity and you really didn't like it because of all the grief surrounding it, check out City Skylines. I think it's pretty decent so far. You can make massive cities. It's really good looking, powerful. I think it's really pretty good for beginners who are new to city building because of the way it hands out, the way it unlocks the different aspects that you don't actually have to worry about, you know, from day one. So you can get it on Steam. It's from Paradox. I like Paradox a lot. I like a lot of their stuff. Check it out. In updated news, I jumped into Elite Dangerous last night to check out the wings feature, which is kind of useless if you're the only person there. The the only obvious update as far as wings go is your comms panel, which sits in the upper left corner of your HUD. And whereas before it basically just said comms and that was it, it's now divided into 4 tabs. So you have your basic comms panel, and then you have your wings panel, which I'm assuming it's like 2 little people. So I'm assuming that's your wings chat area, I guess, maybe. Next to that you have an inbox, and that's where you receive messages that someone wants to join your wing, or you can actually direct message other players now. And the last tab is the settings, where you can turn on and off different chat features. So you can shut wings off if you want. You can turn off your willingness to accept a direct message. You can turn on and off the integrated voice comms, which will, I guess, automatically turn on when you're in a wing. So you can do that. Some of the other additional things that I noticed was in the contacts panel, you now have the ability to collect your share of trade revenue. So let's say I'm in a wing with a friend, and I've got a 12 grand trade mission, and it wants me to go out, source some materials and bring it back to the station. So I go out, find it, bring it back, all while I am in a wing with a friend who's, I don't know, off doing something different. When I come in and turn in my the mission, drop off the goods, my friend will actually be able to get a percentage of that payout. Now, I don't know if there's a proximity requirement, or if that payout, that percentage comes out of my payout. So, if they get 10%, that subtracts from my payment amount. And if that's divided between however many people in the wing, I guess that's good, because if you have 4 people in a full wing and you're all doing these transport missions, essentially you would get, the majority of your own haul plus a percentage of 3 other people's haul in a full wing. So it's a faster way to make money right there. In the same vein, now if you are in a wing and you are tapping the same NPC, everybody will get a percentage of the bounty on a wanted target. So that's good. So there's no more kill stealing, or there's no more whoever got the last shot. And 2 other noticeable things are the signal sources, the weak signal source and the strong signal source. One of the problems with signal sources is that you never knew if there was actually anybody worthwhile in those things, or the unidentified signal source. Now with the weak and strong signal sources, a weak signal source gives you an indication that there may be some ships there, so there's just a few ships there, while a strong signal source gives you an indication that there may be a lot of ships there. So the strong signal source you'd want to go after with a wing, or with a particularly strong ship, while the weak signal source you can go after, probably solo or just with a few people. So I'm hoping to at some point get in with some friends so we can actually test the wing features and see how that works.